Well, welcome back to the Carrot and Stick podcast, a podcast series where we look to get under the skin of all things performance management and motivation, understand what makes our wonderful world of recruitment tick. Today, I'm sitting down with Saeed Bhor, not a usual guest for this podcast, but one that I was very excited to speak to. Saeed's got 5 years experience in recruitment as a recruitment consultant and then went on a whole upward journey of becoming an ops manager, an ops director and a COO before he set up Embedded Ops. What he does is he consults on all things to do with data and systems, and he's been doing it for a while, and so he knows an awful lot about what's going on inside of companies, whether they're looking at moving CRM, better managing their teams, setting up reports and analytics. You name it, he's probably been involved in it at some step along the way. Today, we have a really good conversation, starting out with how people should be thinking about data a little bit differently, touching on Rectech and the ever-expanding landscape that it is, and then also ending with a little chat around experts in the space and what to watch out for. He's got some really good actionable tips that I know you're going to find infinitely useful, so without further ado, let's get into it. Saeed Bhor, founder at Embedded Ops. Saeed, or Sai as you just told me, thanks so much for coming on to join us. Really looking forward to this chat today. How has your week been?
My week has been, it's been good. It's been eventful. I am very anti 4-day weeks. I'm just one of those miserable people that just doesn't like it because I cram 5 days work into 4 around the kids and everything else. So, and it's half term to top it all off. So, it's been busy and eventful. This might be my last call of the day before I wrap up some emails and head to the pub.
That feels like a great plan. In fact, I'm not quite at the point of going to the pub yet. My brother has said to me, "Do you want to play some golf after work?" And I'm like, well, I don't finish till 4:30, but maybe at that point we can. We'll see. And he's like, "Oh, maybe we'll get a beer afterwards." I'm like, "Yeah, maybe afterwards, but first we'll do the hard work, right?"
Yeah.
See how we get on. But for those who don't know who you are, tell us who you are. Tell us what you do.
Yeah, my name's Saeed Bhor, or Sai as everyone knows me. I am a consultant advisor to the recruitment sector, advising agencies on all things operations, which invariably covers a lot of recruitment technology. My backdrop is I was a contract recruiter for very many years. I never worked at S3, or I wish I did, so I could put it on my headline on LinkedIn. But always worked for sort of SMB size agencies. Found my niche, loved it. 250 contractors that did what I recruited for, and just spent my whole week calling the list from top to bottom, making sure that they all remembered who I was and built relationships. I was a relationship-based recruiter. By virtue of being a very good on Excel, and when I say very good on Excel, I could do AutoSum. I became the ops person, or the person responsible for reporting and analytics, and doing all the monthly meeting packs, etc. Had a couple of other senior stints. I was an ops director for a bit, and then I went into a COO role. Really fancy job title. It was 30 odd people that focused on hedge fund recruitment, so COO seemed like the right title for it. And now I spend my days consulting. I either do interim style gigs where I'm on site 1 to 2 days a week, delivering multiple work streams, all geared around improving agency efficiency, or I am visiting agencies up and down the country conducting audits. Typically on something of their choosing. They'll know that there's something that's not quite working, or they don't understand something. But also all round MOT health checks for recruitment agencies.
I've got to ask there, as you mentioned, the kind of MOT health checks, which I love, by the way, because it really makes it obvious what it is you're going in to do. At least in your experience over the last couple of years, what have you seen are like the common mistakes that maybe, I don't know, mid-size recruitment, or say under 50 people or so, they're around about that size, and they're like, cool, we're at a stage now, we've got to start taking this seriously, we need an audit. What are you observing when you're going into these companies?
There are definitely some recurring things that happen. I think fundamentally, operationally, there's usually a lack of control on or visibility of the supplier base, and what the costs are. Is it price per user per month? Is it annual? When's the renewal? What are the notice periods? There's not that level of data around the supplier management, which, by the way, I think is a fundamental pillar for having a good ROI strategy. So one of the things, that's the second thing that I think I always find, is no one really knows how they would judge ROI on certain spend that they've got. Databases and usage, like adoption, is just, I think tech adoption is a global problem for all businesses of whichever sector you're in. But I think in recruitment specifically, people don't log things on the CRM, nothing's on the CRM. You've got placements happening, like the contact added, job added, interview, placement, all on the same day. It's like the shortest deal cycle you've ever seen. So I see that a lot. Adoption is a real big problem. I think the quality of data that people have in terms of we were calling it business data earlier. So, the data that they hold on their markets that they've recruited, their candidates, their clients, is generally quite poor. because of the process by which they recruit doesn't capture it. And those same processes also churn out really, really crap performance data. I'm sure one up have connected to certain systems and gone, well, there's nothing being logged, so we can't actually see anything, right?
We've had some very interesting stories where we've come in because someone said, simply aren't using our CRM enough. I need my guys to be logging more stuff on there. And we look at the activity graph from before we got put in place to afterwards. As soon as we put an incentive up on a screen in their office saying, oh, it's all about putting notes on your CRM, whoosh. Like one crazy stat, we didn't want to use it in a case study because it seems so ridiculous, is like their CRM logged activities went up 594%. And I was like, if we put that in a case study, no one's going to believe it. But the graph difference was honestly mental afterwards. It's crazy.
I can actually genuinely believe it's actually one of the number one remedies I'd say to people about trying to encourage people to use the database more. Funny enough, is the name of your podcast. You have to have a carrot strategy and a stick strategy, and you need to be clear as to which point you pick up one and put down the other.
Totally.
So usually, obviously, carrot first and then stick after. But I've worked at agencies though where it's been just not even stick; it's like sledgehammer. You just have to do it, otherwise you're just not going to survive. So those are the most common things I'd say. Just like a real grasp on what they're spending tech wise and the suppliers and how they generate ROI, and poor data, which again I think is just a symptom of poor processes.
Well, we're definitely coming into that because that's one of the 3 topics you gave me earlier on. And just to kind of give overview for our listeners on what it is you said you want to go through. First one is a general chat about Rectech, products being expanding, going from point solutions to being like system-based solutions and how hard that can be to navigate. I spoke to someone about this yesterday, so that is very, very pertinent. Speaking about data, and you mentioned it earlier, difference between performance data and recruitment data. They are 2 different things that you've got to make sure you're thinking about. And also navigating this experts landscape, because there's a lot of them out there in the market. I mean, frankly, you're one of them as well. So I'm very keen to dig into a bit of a meta-analysis while you get hot under the collar. We'll see how things go. But you still down for those? Sound like good topics to get into?
All good. Let's go.
Smashing. Cool. We'll come to that data one first, actually. I changed the order a little bit because we've already slightly touched on it. You mentioned performance data and recruitment data. I use the term, business data because we've been speaking about this ourselves internally. It's a very, very relevant time for us to have this episode on the go. Talk to me about what you mean when you say that. What do you mean by performance data and what do you mean by recruitment data?
So performance data is all the stuff relating to the results that are coming out of the actions and activities that you're asking your consultants to perform. So it can be count or quality, right? It can be skill or will. So when I think about performance data, some of it is just telling us about the level of will and effort that's going into it, total dials, total email sent, all of that sort of binary stuff. Then you've got the skill stuff, the quality stuff, the ratios. Ratios get spoken about all the time, but actually, I think in general they're quite poorly rolled out, or reading the data is hard.
Using them is also the hard part, I think, for a lot of people. What do they actually tell you?
Yeah, I think some people look at ratios and they're like, "Oh, that doesn't look quite good," or
"That is good."
What is good? Yeah, what's good for your industry? What's good for your sector? What's good for the level of experience of the person? So I'm a big believer in performance data targets or perform KPIs or targets being set really at a granular desk level to that person. But the bit that I always find interesting is someone looks at a ratio and goes, that's not very good. Like I've sent 5 CVs, I've got 1 interview. Yeah, that's pretty poor in reality. And I think that's probably pretty poor in most industries. But then people just sometimes can't articulate what do we need to change behavior-wise to impact that ratio. So I do a lot of that stuff. I've managed teams, been a recruiter. I obsess about data. I love seeing the needle move. I said it over the last 2 years in pretty much everywhere I've spoken. The one product that I think will help you move the needle if you're having a tough time and underperforming is a good analytics product, because you can look at it, and as long as you can read it and know what behaviors will move it, that's what you got to do. Carrot and stick, put it in front of people, and off you go.
Can I challenge a little bit around that for a second? Not too much challenge to disagree with it, but one thing that at least my belief and what my assessment has been, is what we often see in agencies is you find your top billers are the ones that get promoted at some point towards being a manager. It's kind of a natural progression point. And they have this data. They're told, hey, you can use this to coach people. They don't really know how. Like, cool, I've got this ratio here. Like, what does that really mean to me? I mean, I've got to make more phone calls. Like, they don't really know how to go to that next level down in a way. But how do you encourage like those that maybe haven't got that experience of being a manager to use the data to actually make an impact on their team?
Yeah, really good. I think running the session, I do a session with sort of team leaders or seniors that are about to be given a researcher or a rookie to train, which is about it's called reading the data. It's nothing too fancy, but you basically work your way back from the money. So I like building dashboards. Dashboards are my favorite things. So you can build a dashboard. Yeah, easy in one up actually when you want to build a dashboard.
Not a paid promotion.
No, but I like going from like looking at the total dials, so that the literally top of funnel activity that you could have, and then looking at debtor days and looking at all the relationships between them all, right? And if we just break it back down to recruitment and activity ratios, so you've got the recruitment ratios is CV to placement, CV to first interview, those ones. Then you've got the activity ones that should get you outputs that then get you into the recruitment workflow. So if I call this many people and log this many qualification call notes, I should be sending this many CVs to this role, and off you go in the recruitment funnel. It's if that is not satisfactory or the output isn't enough, you either pull the lever that says do more here, which is so crap to say to people, right? Please do more. But actually, you could talk about how you improve the quality of the relationship between them. So you've had to qualify 20 candidates to send one CV. You're probably speaking to the wrong people. Like, we need to go look at your search. We need to go look at who you're targeting. If all of those candidates have already been spoken to about the role, we need to go revisit the role. Is it an A grade role that we should be working on, or has it been hammered by every man and his dog on the market? You know, it's like teaching those things and those scenarios. And if I'm honest, I don't like the term playbook, but you can create a couple of scenarios that are commonly occurring in the marketplace, like the roles you're calling candidates, they've all been spoken to, go requalify the role, don't work it. Like, you can make it really playbook feel for people that are starting out as management. But yeah, it's understanding the activity relationship, I think, because CV to first and first to final is all process related stuff, but that activity to output relationship and what you need to do better or what could cause it to be wonky, yeah, that knowledge is so important for people to learn, and it just comes with experience. Like, I think if you've done the job, you've lived it, you've seen it in different industries, you'll just know it. Some of it is obvious, but some of it is experience.
Totally. The thing that kind of comes across there, and completely on the same page with it, is like you almost have your quantity and you have your quality data. Quantity being, are you doing enough? Quality being, are you doing it the right way? And the ever-present journey, I think, in recruitment is there's always something you can improve at one of those points. Like, activity is it's very much straight up a numbers game. It's, are you motivated, like you say, carrot or stick, to do enough? Making sure then that you're doing it at the right level is the most important part. I was sat down with a client a couple of weeks ago who was saying the problem they have is a new job comes in, and everyone gets really excited by the new job and they forget about the old ones. There's also kind of a third layer to it around making sure you've got the right focus in the right places and not getting excited by the new shiny object that comes in through the front door. You can have all the training in the world to do things the right way, quality-wise, and be doing enough activity, but if you're not putting the right focus in the right places, you can see why it becomes quite a sprawling picture that confuses managers and leaders alike.
And all the while, all of this stuff is happening, if people are logging things left, right, and center, or logging things incorrectly, or not logging things, you're not getting enough data to help steer or make that any better. Like, you don't get the data to help you go and assess the process, because you need the data to kind of assess whether the process is working or not. If the process has been designed to not have any data outputs, i.e. there's no logging behind it, there's no expectations around what the results should look like for a process, then you're not hiding to nothing, and it just does spiral out of control. Process, I mean, what's the someone joked with me the other day and said I should get it as a tattoo, but I often post about process over tech. You know, process is greater than tech. I firmly believe it. I'll never change my mind on it. Like, no one's going to convince me otherwise, because I've seen agencies, I call them spit and sawdust agencies. You turn up and there's 10 people in a trading estate in Wiltshire with mobile phones, LinkedIn.com, and a database that's probably, end of life. And they're making money. Like, they are making money because they are good. They do all the good stuff on the phone. They qualify, they get leads, they soft close every step of the way. It's just good recruitment. So yeah, process over tech for me. And that's
if tech gets in the way of the process, it's bad tech. I don't care how pretty it looks or what features have been built. If it's stopping you doing what you need to get done efficiently, which is what tech should be there to do, it's not good.
Nah, agreed.
I love that. I really love that piece. If we then look at the kind of second piece, right? You mentioned the performance data that we spoke about there, your ratios, your activity, recruitment data. How does that differ? How are companies maybe using that wrong today?
I think that I spent a little bit of time speaking to some agencies who had funding or were looking at raising money or or flirting around with private equity houses. And one of the key recurring themes was they wanted to know about data. And actually people started presenting performance data. They were like, no, not interested in that. We actually want to know like what IP or business specifically owned data do you have on your market, on your niche? Like how many of these super niche skilled people do you have on your database, and how many of them have been spoken to in the last 6 months? How many of them are following you on your social channels? So that's what I mean about like the recruitment data. It's like, not just. It's funny, isn't it? Because back in the day, the first thing that went on a presentation deck was, we have 400,000 candidates on our database. And it's just like, that means nothing.
And I suppose about 5,000 of them in the last 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. And I still hear it now. I go to do these audits sometimes and I'll turn up and they'll be like, we've got an amazing database side, 40,000 candidates just in this small town or whatever it's going to be. They're really proud about it. And the first search I'll do on whatever system it is, I know my way around a fair few CRMs, is, last contacted. But then it'll be like, what was the last contact about? So if it's just an email for GDPR consent, that doesn't count, right?
That they ignored.
Yeah, exactly. And so you end up with like this really tiny percentage of like active candidates in database. So I'm a really big fan of that active percentage. Like, what can you strive to? How can you strive to make that better? I got asked by a client last week, what should we be aiming for? And I was like, if I'm honest with you, I don't even know if anyone's done the research to say what is an optimal active CRM database. I don't know. All I know is
it really depends on the size, because you can feel like a CRM database with a bunch of contact details you scrape off Lucia or Cognism or whatever else, right? Or LinkedIn just exports a bunch of stuff for you, or other stuff is more carefully sort of assembled over the years. There's probably no definitive percentage that feels like the right number. And if there ever was one, there'll always be people saying, oh, but what about in this case? And what about in that case? So I wouldn't even try and look for a number. More just a case of, do you have enough candidates you actively are working? Forget about the percentage. How many are you actually working? And is that enough for you to be able to fulfill as many jobs as you want to be filling each month?
Yeah, agreed. And the other thing, the other one-liner that probably comes out of my mouth loads is, I can't remember who said it, but you can't improve what you don't measure. So actually just benchmark it now. Just be like, right, I have got 100,000 people in my database, but we've only spoken to 5,000 of them in the last year. All right, cool. What can we do to try and nurture that and update that? And that's when all the Rectech stuff comes into play. But there's other stuff. My favorite thing is when I go into agencies and they've got really cool coded, really cool functional coding models that serve a purpose. So it's not just, this is a project manager, so they've got a job function code called project manager. It's like, we knew that they were a project manager from their job title, but people that code by niche, hard to find skills. The advice I give to anybody trying to build a coding model is, just if it's on the CV and anyone can see it from the job boards or on LinkedIn, does it need to be coded? Probably not. Maybe at the top layer, but that really niche level coding, that's the shit you get from. You're allowed to swear on this podcast. Sorry.
Sure.
That was the. That's the shit. That's the money stuff, right? That's the stuff you find out. So when you are hitting your performance metrics and you're on the phone and you're qualifying and you're like, right, how did that project go? What module did you implement? Oh, was there anything about that project that was unique to any other projects you've been on? Oh yeah, this was a conundrum. I had to factor in X, Y, Z. Code X, Y, Z, because if that was unique, that was difficult, never been done before, and it is something that's going to come along, you've got someone in your database that's coded as that. It's not on their CV. It's not available to the general public. That's your business intelligence on that person and on your market, and coded like that. And some of the stuff I see is mental. Some of the markets that people I've had the pleasure of working with, that they're in, there's a recruitment agency for everything out there. And
we come across them and I'm just like, huh?
Yeah. Like I was speaking to a cosmetics recruitment business not long ago, and they were talking about like what they use to build the products. And like, if you've worked with a certain type of raw ingredient in these like manufacturing, it's like an FMCG recruiter that does cosmetics, and they have that all coded. And I looked at the code and I was like, does this make a lot of sense to you guys? And they're like, mate, if we can find these people, we can spec them out all day long and probably book multiple interviews for them. And that's how in demand that skill is. So yeah, that really, like, how prolific are you in your market? What do you know about your market that other people don't know, and it's housed in your data that you can leverage to access them quicker or access them full stop because other people can't? That gives you that competitive edge. So that's what I mean when I speak about business data in a recruitment setting.
Makes perfect sense. I think the real danger for a lot of companies when they get started is they don't have the maturity or the knowledge on, what should we be tracking from day one? Because the
Yeah,
hard thing is, as you get later down the line, you've got a database of 10,000 candidates that you might speak to throughout the year. None of them have got any of these tags against them or any kind of categorization. Now, suddenly you've got to do it. That's a mammoth task to go with. If someone came to you and was like just getting started and you wanted to advise them on where to get started with any kind of categorization or tagging to make things useful, I've also seen companies go the other way and tag everything and it just gets in people's way. Where would you encourage them to start?
if they were just starting out as a business and wanted to think about where to categorize, my first thing would always be, I'm not a business coach, I'm not a non-exec director, like I've never owned my own recruitment agency, so I can't advise from that standpoint. But I do know that those that are niche down, super niche, inch wide, mile deep, to use the commonly used phrase, I would say, what is that? Make sure that that's super clear, and then what are the layers beneath it, and then go from top down. I always say, what's the top 10 most in demand requests from an experience or skill set or qualification perspective? What's typically hardest to find? Because actually, you want to run internal initiatives on expanding that hard to find talent pool, and start there, because you don't want to be coding people up for stuff that people don't want to buy. And equally, you don't want to just be always looking for people, rocking horse shit that's just not going to be out there. So it's just like the balance between that. But that's what I would say. It's like what is being bought the most, what skill sets are in demand the most by your client base, and what are the tough to find ones. Because if you know the tough to find ones and you find those people, they're great for knocking down the knocking down doors. Candidate short market, right? If they I think most people would agree they prefer candidate short markets because you're product led and you go knock down doors with
At
that.
the end of the day, candidates aren't what comes to you saying, I want to spend this money with you. They might be the ones that make you the money. They're the product almost, but it's the jobs that you'd rather have because they're the things where a client is saying, I want to give you money to solve this problem for me.
Yeah, exactly that. So yeah, there's a big difference between it. I do a presentation on data is your friend. It targeted at recruiters, right? It's targeted at recruiters because I don't think we spend enough
I
time.
need to get on these presentations, mate. They sound really fun.
That was a TRN huddle. There was a TRN huddle with like 100 recruiters, and I did data is your friend. I actually didn't think it landed very well because you know what it's like when you're up there, you just can't work out how well it's going.
Totally.
But the feedback was so good, and like it changed. So many people messaged me afterwards saying, "Oh, you need to speak to my manager's asked for a call because he wants to understand what's the difference then between performance data and the business data." There were founders in that room actually that were like never ever thought about the fact that what we have in our database, in particularly the notes against candidates in our database, as being of value. Like never thought of it as that providing intrinsic value to their agency. So yeah, I think we don't do a good job of educating recruiters on it, and I don't. It's prescribed. Like you join an agency, and it's like, right, whenever you speak to someone, if they say they do this, click this, log that, press save, and then if you can you do 20 of those a day, please? It's like.
Which begs a really interesting question. And this wasn't a topic we had for today. Like I've spoken about it to the death and I'm speaking about it every day at the moment. And you know exactly what two letters I'm going to say. It's AI, right?
Yeah.
There's probably a future where something is analyzing the conversations you're having, candidate CVs, LinkedIn profiles, and being able to do this auto tagging for you. The blessing being at any given moment, you could say, right, go and crawl back over all these profiles, all these phone calls, and recategorize into what I need. Are you thinking that's a potential future we go down, or have you seen any interesting applications in that area that you think, yeah, that could be a real game changer?
I mean, I think the AI CRM that's on everyone's lips is Atlas at the moment.
Bless. What really made me laugh, bless. You won't mind me saying as well. One of them messaged me last week saying, "I've just lost a deal because of you." I was like, "What, really?" And he was like, "Yeah, they want gamification analytics and stuff." And I was like, "Well, let's integrate and have a conversation." They're a really, really cool CRM. Actually, I've recommended them a couple of times over the last week or two as the ones that they're almost building like. Would it go as far as calling like a next gen CRM? I probably would say it would because it's not the old gen air quotes are like bad or out of date or anything. Like Bullhorn had a Bullhorn Amplify that came out 2 days ago. Looked really, really cool.
It's good, yeah.
But Atlas are kind of always built with AI at the forefront, and I think it's a really interesting bit of tech.
I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting bit of tech. I think I did convince someone to not buy it recently. I think Jordan knows about it. Anyway, I've met Jordan a few times now. Yeah,
Jordan messaged me about losing the deal. Actually, bless him. No, it wasn't Jordan actually online. No, but he mentioned Jordan in the call in the conversation I was having with him about it.
I like it. I like that someone's trying to do something different. I'm all for innovating, 100%.
Mm.
I just can't. I'd find it hard if I was an internal ops director moving my multi-million-pound recruitment business onto it, because it's still very startup, still some core functionality piece around it. But they've got AI tagging. But I think they've got a paid advert going out at the moment on LinkedIn. Me, like a dickhead, didn't realize it was a paid advert and commented on it, thinking
You're that people are always just like, oh, what idiot comments on paid ads, and here you are.
it was me, and I was like, because in my head I was like, oh, he never ever replied to that comment that I made, and then I saw it again, and I was like, oh shit, there I am again commenting.
Oh, excellent.
But he was like, it was talking about like auto tagging people from what it sees on LinkedIn profiles as skills. Now I can go onto your profile now, Derry, and endorse you for having the best haircut in the West Midlands, right? And that's going to tag the CRM.
Endorsements are all bollocks anyway, aren't they? Let's be honest.
It's just nonsense. So I think the world of AI tagging from notes is coming. There's some really cool kit out there. Like I love Carve. I think Carve looks the bollocks, man. I think that is really cool. Carve. So they've got, it's similar to like an AI note taker that can also produce outputs. It can integrate to CRMs, update fields.
CARV.com.
CARV.com, yeah. Dutch bunch, again, very nice. Actually, I'm on a project at the moment where they're integrating into the CRM. So I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on with that one, but that looks very cool. But yeah, what would be amazing is you do a call, your VoIP solution transcribes it, summarizes it, creates output documents, picks up on the language to say, right, that's an updated skill, that's a niche skill. But I think we're going to have to train them to do that, right? So I use Quill as my note taker, and I've got all the prompts set up to help me create the outputs or create the specific summary types that I want, because sometimes I'll do process workshops online and I'll have my meeting. So I wanted to put it out in a certain way. So I think once we get to the habit of, once there's more data available, I think these systems will be much better and useful. But I still think there's always going to be an element of us as the humans training it, creating the prompts, validating them. But that would be a dream world to live in.
Yeah, I think we're in a really weird one. And this actually starts to lead into the next point we were talking about, which was Rectech as well, about point solutions versus expansive things. So I've gone on to Carve's website here. It's on my left monitor. And one of their points on the page is say goodbye to point solutions. And for those who don't know, a point solution is a software or a bit of a solution that, like you might say, is an inch wide and mile deep, right? They focus on one thing and do it really, really well. If I look back through history, it's obviously changed now, but Odro, I think a name that many would know in the space. Video tech was their thing, like video interviews. And now they've got things like HireDeck, and they're expanding and becoming more of a system of tools instead.
Yeah.
But point solution, it's a really weird debate. And I see it all the time in the software world as well, where there's value in having everything under one system, but the problem is that everything ends up then being like, it's like a puddle, it's not super deep. Whereas point solutions can focus very, very heavily into one area. And being candid for one up is where we tend to do well with CRMs is sure, they all do reporting, but none of them are focused on developing reporting particularly deeply because they're focused on building out the core CRM or building many other solutions they could be working on. And we've seen platforms like Vincherry that declared themselves, the Rec OS, they did a bit of everything. And to be fair, they do a hell of a lot. But you can't go deep into every single one of those things without having huge tech teams that you're simply not going to see in this space.
No, and I think some of the bigger players go down the acquisition route, right, to
exactly
and acquire someone that's already gone the depth. But I think, OneUp as an example, it's I think the price point of OneUp and the ease of use and setup and the gamification elements of it, it just makes it a no-brainer for someone to just say, right, it's not an offensive cost because of the impact it's going to have on performance potentially. The upside of the business case and the ROI is super easy to track. It's like you said, before having OneUp, no one logged a lick, and now you've got 5,000% more, right? Rectech is an interesting one. There's it keeps me in a job, right? I'm an ops person, and I work with all the various tech providers. So I am completely independent. I do not take any kickbacks or referral fees. The most anyone's ever done for me is buy me a pint or maybe some food if we're at an event together. I have a whole bunch of merch behind me from various different Rectech companies. I'm passionate about the space, but I think it's providing a headache to the buyer. Yeah, and I think I'm always going to be agency side first. I represent the agency when I'm working with them, especially on project work. And I think before you knew the point solutions that solved everything, but actually if you had 3 years ago bought point solutions from Odro, Sourcewell, Sourcewell have expanded out. I'm trying to think who else has expanded stuff that they've done recently, but let's just use them two for now. So you had Sourcewell for your email sequencing and reminders to do some LinkedIn automation gumph, and then you had Odro to all your video stuff. Then all of a sudden, Odro released no, and then let's say you bought Hirara anyway separately. Then Odro releases Hire Deck, and then you're like, "Fuck!" Now I've got two products that do
Doing
that,
the same thing, yeah.
the same thing, and the price is going to go up. And then some of my users like it Hire Deck, some of my users like Hirara. It's like it's just there's so much of that happens out there.
It's kind of natural competition in the space, isn't it? As well, then it's in a fight for in a weird way. Although it's just confusing for the consumer, they win because there's competition, and competition drives everything to be better.
That is very true. But I think what ends up happening is that it depends on how they're sold, because actually, if you Hire Deck is a bit different because actually they developed that completely separately, didn't they? And it's analyzed. But some of the ones that just start doing more things natively in the platform, they're the ones I think start confusing people, especially if they go out to market with that new feature being the thing driving people back in. It's great for the Rectech vendor, new things to have conversations around with people, completely get it. But my thing would always be is it's the noise. Like if you are not a savvy, mature Rectech technology purchaser, you're just going to struggle to navigate it. I come back to process over tech all the time. So whenever people come to me and say, I get the question I get every week, what's the best recruitment CRM then? What's the best recruitment CRM then? And it's like,
so hard, isn't it?
Yeah. And I hate sounding like a politician, but I always have to turn around and say, well, it really does depend, right? How many headcount are you? What sector do you work? Do you have timesheet requirements? Do you need middle office? Or there's so much to it. But I always say to people, just be very clear when you're going to market as to what you need to buy. If you are looking for a platform, I think everyone uses the word platform, right? We're a platform to do this, operating system to do this. If you're going down that route, my advice is always to be like, okay, did all these features come out on day one? No. Yeah. What's your latest? Can I have a timeline? How many customers are using this? How many customers are using that?
What are you looking at next as well? So like you said, there aren't those conflicts in the platform later.
100% roadmap. What else can come down the line? Because it might impact a purchasing decision, another purchasing decision by the marketing department because they've got something coming out in 6 months. And then the word that everyone uses, there's an API, it integrates. It integrates. It's like,
as someone that's done 50 odd integrations in this sector, a lot of those APIs are shit.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say. And I mean, I'm not calling anyone particular there, but a lot of APIs are awful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a technical person. I mean, I understand how APIs work functionally because I've been involved in projects implementing recruitment technology and had to get involved. But it's like, I always have to ask the question, how many customers are using it right now and to what volume, right? Like if you have 100 customers using it, but they're, utilizing the API 2 or 3 times a month, not interested. I want to know high volume traffic going through that, how many times it's failed, issues, tickets. These are all things in my head are pretty standard to ask. I mean, I even ask these things as an ops person, but I think I've recruited tech. So I recruited for large ERP programs. So I understood project phases and, we placed people into testing phases and we knew all the documentation that needed to be done. So I think I learned a bit about it through there. But that is my big thing with Rectech at the moment. Go process first. What's the process? What's the requirement? Where can tech augment? Where must tech work? Like what are the non-negotiables? Run selection processes, avoid the overlap. And when you're running the selection process, hopefully before you start that process, you've got a business case and you understand the ROI you're expecting from the spend and just track that from day one, whether that's wholesale change like CRM, middle office, back office, or whether that's a new note taker or whether that's a CV formatter. It's interesting because I still can't believe people launched new CRMs. Like there's so many out there, but in the last few years, even more have popped up. I think it's a mad market.
Fascinating. It's so fascinating because it's almost like you said earlier about agencies, how there's always an agency to focus on a specific niche that you just didn't think you'd hear about. You hear CRMs trying to do the same thing all the time, whereas it's like, we focus on agencies that are below 15 users, they're only doing contract recruitment and they're only trying to serve these 2 or 3 markets, for example. You can get so niche and crazy with them. And I think equally, the one thing you hear a lot about the CRM space, for wrongly or rightly, is people get frustrated with a lot of the known players in the space. Oh, they don't do this, they don't do that. Their customer support's got worse. They don't do this. They try and charge you for this thing over there. I understand the frustration with it. And even when you see players like, Salesforce and HubSpot dominating the general CRM market in the software world or the insurance world or whatever, there's always a new player that needs to turn up and try and do something. In fact, a recent one that appeared was one called Atio. And their whole thing was like a highly customizable CRM. Like, I don't think it's too relevant to recruitment, but they turned up, took on massive funding, and now they're trying to challenge those big boys as well. There's always someone that wants to come and build the next thing to do. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and interestingly, the frustration that you get from founders or anyone agency side, the consumer, the customer in that relationship with some of the big players is really funny, right? Because I work with large agencies and I work with really small ones. You'll have a small agency founder who's so close to the sales floor, it's their baby, their business, and they're getting treated with not a lot of love and attention by Bullhorn, who quite frankly don't care about a 10 user. Who does?
That's their conscious choice, right? I mean, I'd even say to our degree, I'll be dead candid about this. Like, we're in a similar spot where, we have a customer success function that looks after these customers, but the problem that we have, and I mean no ill by saying any of this, often what you find is the smaller someone is, the more love and attention they need, but the problem is they pay the least as well.
Yeah.
And so trying to be able to find a way to support 300 odd customers that are paying you less than £5,000 a year, for example, is really tough to do. It is hard.
100%. Do you know what I always say? It's always like the relativity thing. So that less than 5,000 to one up, for example, but £3,500 to a 5-person agency. It's the percentage relativity between the two. As soon as you have that disparity, it's like that's where the expectations are. But I say it all the time. Like, so sometimes if I'm working with an agency who's about to go through a CRM selection process, I'll have a section in there about, the relationship. So, who are you going to get? Is there a CS function? Is it dedicated CS person? What's the recurring love and attention look like? Is it quarterly, half yearly? And
what's
also
support access like is a big one too.
Support access, email versus portal, even that makes a difference. Like, if the agency says we like to pick up the phone when we have a problem, all right, well, that's an important requirement for the CRM selection process, right? So I go through all of that kind of stuff, like vendor relationship stuff. And actually, sometimes I look at an agency and I go, you don't need to go to a big boy because you're going to need a little bit more love. So here are some real startup players that are looking at getting a foothold in the market. Not only will you probably have access to owners and the senior people in that business, you'll also probably be able to help shape the product. Sometimes founders love that shit. They're like, oh yeah, wicked, finally someone's going to listen to me about what I think is right for a CRM. So you have to play the people into the right people, otherwise you're not going to get the result you want.
And you've got to decide if you want that appetite to play with a developing solution essentially versus a more incumbent established one, because of course with the latter one you do tend to get better integrations, more tools that speak to each other, more mature products, at least most of the time. The newer ones, you might get to influence the product a little bit, but you have to appreciate they've got a lot of competing concerns and a lot of customers that have got ideas, and you might get listened to, but sometimes you might not at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
It's such a fascinating relationship balance. I find it so interesting. Like, it's changed for us naturally. Like, 5 years ago, someone would say, "Oh, I'd love to be able." In fact, I specifically remember a few clients. We had about 35 at the time, and they were like, "Oh, your TVs are great, but can we show up when someone closed a deal, like as it happens up on the TV?" And literally in a weekend, me and my co-founder built what are now our deal flashes system that's up on the TV. Someone closes a deal, books an interview, and bam, it's up there. And like these days, there's so many requirements. People being like, I want to be able to access your data through an API to extract it into our data warehouse. Others are like, I want it to be able to connect better into Microsoft Teams. Others are like, I want to connect this VoIP system up. You get so many feature requests, and prioritizing it gets so difficult. It's a real challenge, and it is really hard. But I agree with you. It's worth understanding, how does a company prioritize feature requests, for example? Are you going to get a seat at the table, or are you going to have to go with the wins and just kind of follow whatever they tell you you're getting?
I had a call. I've been on a project call this morning for 3 hours with an ops manager who's fantastic. I absolutely love her to bits. Works one of my clients, and there's a really annoying feature in the CRM that they use where in the opportunities or leads module, it doesn't have a create date or when it was added date. It just has a days open function, right? And I get why. It's a sales process. It's like you don't want to leave it open for long. It's meant to drive the psychological behavior behind, right, it's been open too long, let's go do something with it. But she, as an ops person, has to report on when these things were created, in 1 month, in what month, and the other.
Yeah.
And she said to me, she was like, "Sorry, can you just speak to them and get them to just add that field in?" I was like,
I've got the keys to the kingdom. I'll do it.
I was like, I'll just give them a call. Anyway, so I've requested it anyway because we're working closely with them. So they've given us a solutions engineer who's been helping us through quite a complex program. And I sort of suggested it. And then this was a few months back anyway. We had a project box off meeting today with all like outstanding little items, and I've got to do some documentation over the weekend probably for them. She had it as the number one outstanding item was, where's this create field on opportunities? I was like, I can't even get you an update on this. I don't even know who to speak to about it.
That's excellent. I can think of some really small features we've added that I'm like, we don't really need to do this, but 3 customers have asked for it, and you add it, and it is like you've just changed their life. I'm just like, I can't believe that's such a big thing for you. It's crazy, but it happens. Yeah.
It would make her life. She would be over the moon if they added that. If they added that create field, honestly.
I'll keep holding. Maybe they will at some point, hey? But come back to the Rectech piece, and you spoke a little bit about making sure you understand your requirements is kind of like one big thing. Is if nothing else, write down a list to make sure you're checking all those off as you go to different vendors. Another one is making sure you're asking those questions on them. What are your update cycles like? Do I have a CSM? Do I have a phone contact that I can reach out to with support queries? Again, back against your checklist. What else would you recommend people think about when trying to navigate the tech scene?
Yeah, so the selection process, being clear from processes, track it on one doc, like it doesn't have to be fancy, Excel, scoring mechanism. If you're really clever, put some weighting in there in terms of what's priority, what's not. Negotiations on contracts, like just negotiate, like everyone negotiates. I
can tell you this as someone that obviously sells to a lot of recruiters. Everyone negotiates. we have a little like moniker internally, but recruiters love a deal, and it's very true. They love getting a deal.
Yeah, I mean, like good recruiters, like so when we used to recruit, and for some of the advisory clients I work with, we send standard terms of business out, and they're punchy, right? They start at 35%. Their payment terms are on receipt. The candidate ownership windows, 2 years. You inflate everything because the person is going to want a deal. Someone in procurement, someone at the client side is going to say, no, we can't pay you on receipt. We'll pay you on 7 days. But you nicked 35% fees, and you got ownership of candidates better. So we do it as recruiters. We negotiate. But I do see a lot of. I think CRMs get away with it more than you do because they get. I think people just walk into CRM contracts and don't have a conversation about break clauses, expectations, and
by then you sign into a 5-year contract, and it's a little bit like God.
Yeah, and the length comes up, the additional licenses, the additional license end date, matching to the first batch, things like that. Not negotiating that. I've been into agencies where they've got like 10 licenses that run out in 2 years, and then others that are on a rolling. Then there's there's all this disparity. That's particularly with access, right? Because I think that happens a lot with access when you end up with multiple products from them, but. Yeah, so I'd say negotiate 100%. There is always some negotiation to be done. If you are venturing into the world of new startup CRMs or some that are just, starting to get a lot of attention, things like a material shareholding change clause that means that you can exit it if you want to. I know plenty of people that don't want to buy a CRM from a large technology group. And so if you're worried about a product that you're going to buy becoming a part of that group, you can include something like that in there. Negotiate hard. There's loads of options out there. There's a wonderful feeling in the recruitment sector now of community. We still have lots of dickheads in the space, of course. It's just
they're in every walk of life. You can't go from forever.
Yeah, but I do think that there's lots of support and guidance and help, and people are much more open book these days. I'm in so many good ops group chats on WhatsApp that everyone's willing to share. Every time a client of mine has a renewal coming up, I can just ask in that chat, what's everyone seeing price-wise? And do you know what? Before you'd have before these communities existed and the transparency was there, people probably had their pants pulled down. People probably getting quotes and they didn't know how to check it. Is this right? Is this comparable? Is it not? Whereas now, I think, again, the consumer competition has helped, but access and transparency amongst that, the buying community means that you can validate some of these numbers. I'm doing it at the moment for a client of mine. They've got to renew 75 licenses, and the first quote that came across almost fell off my chair. I was like, because I'm sure someone had mentioned in a group chat 2 weeks ago that they had the price at 20% less than what was quoted. So, so negotiate.
It's such a fascinating industry, I think, in the sense of, it's a bad word to use, but like we often say, like it's a very incestuous industry. People move around an awful lot, so there is a lot of cross-pollination and people move between roles and learning more about each other that way. And like you say, in areas there's strong community, and in others it is completely like shut door. And I think it's a hard one because it's not like every recruitment company is different. Like they may differ slightly in how they operate, but at the end of the day, it's a similar service being provided. And there are going to be conflicts where you're servicing, I don't know, the JavaScript market, for example. There's 2 of you doing that. Could be in different territories. It could be in the same territory, whatever. And that does lead to some closed doors. But I do agree with you. And we see it all the time in like software, for example, that actually being willing to share and be open is such a critical thing. And it's one thing that I say to smaller companies that I speak to, smaller agencies, is don't be afraid to drop someone a message at a larger company and ask them for a coffee to go and get some advice. Like, you'll often find that people are very happy to share. Granted, you're not trying to steal their market share, or you're an ex-employee that's left to go and set up your own thing, for example. Like, granted, there's exceptions, but for the most part, people are very happy to share and be open.
I've made it, people laugh and joke all the time and say that I've had a beer with everyone in the recruitment industry, but I do make an effort of mine to network and make sure I'm connected to and know a lot of the people in the space. And I'd say the last 2 years of running embedded ops, knowing the vendors has been great because the vendors keep me appraised on what's new. I think Mark.
Parsons, Mark?
Yeah, I know Mark.
Who doesn't know Mark?
With the wonderful strides. He's got the best strides in Rectech. He actually was messaging me because one of my advisory clients has just bought one up, and he mentioned about some new stuff that's coming, and he was like, "Can I show you it?" It's like amazing. And then I was on the phone yesterday with Ben Kaywood at Sourcewell. He was showing me some new features. Again, I love to stay abreast of these things so I can advise correctly and know what the art of the possible is. But all of these people have taken time out of their day, diaries, to meet with me, and just some of them have given me some advice. I've had some Rectech ideas, I've had some ideas about products that I think could work in the marketplace. And
you'd be surprised when people reach out and just say, "I've just got an idea, can I just run it by you?" And it's exactly that. It's really cool. And I love seeing it as well, because that kind of innovation, I think when people have been close to the industry and they've got those ideas, it's always born out of a need or a problem they've identified, and that is the best way to start any kind of business.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, like Darren from Pager, I bought him lunch once, and he let me talk at him for an hour. Drees at Chat Automation, I've got Dwight behind me. Yeah. Love Drees. Carl from Conquest, fucking top bloke.
Me and him have spoken so much. Like, I've loved seeing their journey, because for a while we were actually building a competing product, and eventually we binned it off. But me and Carl have spoke loads about stuff like frustrated about APIs together, about hiring and building an SDR function. Like, I got a lot of time for Carl.
Yeah, and we have this sense of community that we have to lean into, I think, as anyone in the recruitment sector, be that suppliers or buyers, recruitment agency founders. But my final thing on anyone that is looking to buy is just stop. Especially if it's CRMs in particular, the last thing you should do is move CRM. I always compare it to buying a house. There's stamp duty, all of that good stuff. Plus, no one knows where anything is for 3 months because you've just moved into a new house. So I always say that's the last thing you should do. I always say the first step is go and have a conversation with your incumbent supplier. Tell them your issues. Tell them you're thinking about leaving. You'll know straight away if they want to keep you, want to work with you, want to help solve your problems. If you don't get that and you really can't fix it by leveraging maybe some other consultants in the space, then it's time to go. But only at that point should you do it. You should look long and hard at yourself as to what you've done to make that product work for your business before saying, I'll go elsewhere. Because guess what? If you don't solve your own internal problems, you're going to lift and shift those problems into a nice, shiny, and new, expensive products. And that's all that happens.
So. The grass ain't always green. And this is the thing, right? You'll get promised the world during a sales process, and the reality can always change. I mean, look, being candid, we've had it a few times where we've seen clients move CRMs. A few recently have gone in cherry to bullhorn saying, I feel like the support isn't fantastic, yada, yada. And I'm like, I'm not being funny, mate, but you're quite a small agency. You think you're getting premium service when you go to Bullhorn as well? Chances are no. I can't obviously speak for Bullhorn. Maybe their model has changed or whatnot. But like you said earlier on, it's the same thing where if you are a small agency, you're going to struggle to find that support. And it's always a case of just making sure. Our biggest encouragement always will, because we do it all the time, ask for reference calls. And not strictly from the vendor themselves. They'll always choose out a good one. Just try and find others through your network, through community who are also using that product, and ask them what their genuine experience has been like. That is the best thing you can ask for, I think, because that's when you get real thoughts on it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm quite closely affiliated to the TRN network, right? So I do all of their, I look after the ops community. I do the ops clinic, and I'm going to be hosting their first in-person ops summit in June. And awesome. That is, again, more people in the sector that are happy to share with you. And there's TRN, I've got a CEO peer group, so you can ask in there. But it's the same with all the networks, right? I think are you guys part of many of the networks? Do you get involved with?
We are a few. So we've always been a long-time member of the RDLC.
Yeah,
I know Gary's a strong character. Bless him. I imagine if he listens to this, he won't disagree. But they gave us our start early on, so we've always been quite supportive of them, and we're in a few chats for that. We are with Required. We are with, I think we've got something going on with TRN as well on the data side of things. So there are a few networks that we're part of, because like you say, you get access to really good communities there that you can have very, very good conversations with.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, the referencing call one's interesting, because everyone always says don't everyone always says try and get one yourself independently. I actually always fancy myself as being able to get information out of people. So even if the vendor decides to provide us with a reference call, I'm always happy to take it, because I always think, because if you just start off by saying, I know they've picked you for a reason, I don't know if you're getting a free month or not, I don't really care, but we just need to know what's on, or what it's about. Right?
To be fair, people ask for reference calls for us, and we won't always pick the golden child. Like, we'll pick ones that, if one, for example, is going through a difficult implementation process, and obviously we're not going to recommend those, but there might be those that have been around for a couple of years that, you know what, aren't our healthiest. They're kind of in the middle. But there might be a case there where they've then got a very real experience of moving from system X to system Y, like this customer might be doing or this prospect might be doing. And that is far more relevant for them, I think, than strictly what are you getting out of one-up. It's more about how is that movement going. So we'll do introductions where it's less about our products and more about a move that someone is making and giving them some heads up on what to do, because it's connecting community, right? Again and again.
Yeah, 100%.
Speaking of community, this is somewhat linked. It is our third topic. We've been going for a while now as well. Bless us, nearly an hour on. Ooh, go us. Experts. Some will probably declare you as one. I think I'd agree as well. It's a crazy landscape, because as you remarked earlier on, I think, especially during COVID, we saw a lot of individual contributors break away from businesses and become these self-proclaimed experts in various areas. I can coach your staff on how to do X, Y, and Z. I can help you build marketing. Fractionals became the cool term to see for a while. There are a lot of them out there, although there is very much value in the model that companies could look to work with and gain from. How the hell do you get started in this space? Because even I, as a software entrepreneur, I feel lost a lot of the time as well, and wait for recommendations before working with someone.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one, because I think when the market took a turn, so 21, 22, everyone was spending money, going mad. You could just send a CV and it was a license to print money. I think as soon as the market got a little bit tough, we all know what happens in the recruitment sector. We all know who the first people on the chopping board: internal recruiters, see you later; marketing people, don't need that, do we? Ops people, nice to have, see you later. I'll get my billing managers to do the reporting from now on, or database checking. So I think there was a lot of people that kind of entered, looking for work in that time. I don't know who. I mean, when I set up Embedded Ops, this is just purely coincidence. There are 4 of us that set up literally registered our companies at Company's House within 4 weeks of each other. So one that does ops mentoring, one that does bullhorn automation consulting, and another one that does sort of IT consulting, fractional CTO stuff. We all literally registered our companies in that week. So we obviously recognized the need for it. How I recognized that there was an opportunity in it was when the market took a turn for being bad. I was getting regular phone calls from people I know and love, asking me, ESI, how do I do this? How do I set that up? This report's telling me this. And I wasn't loving where I was working at the time. It was a bit boring. It was perm. My bonuses were tied to a group of people that I probably didn't believe could achieve the numbers that needed to be achieved for me to earn what I needed to earn. So I went off and did my own thing. But that's then spawned off even more, right? Like, so you've got, there are ops managers out there that have worked at one agency using one system in one market who are doing advisory around ops stuff. And I just don't get how you can advise that well unless you go like for like. So that's your lane. If your lane is I'm just going to go help these agencies who use this technology, who work in this market, that for me is like a really nice, well-defined lane from your experience. Whereas
it's almost hard in a way, because it's somewhat born out of desperation. Like, if someone is let go from a company that's had to downsize drastically and they really struggle to find a new role, if you've got to get money from somewhere, the first thing you probably think to do is how can I offer these services out to support somebody, right? And for what it's worth, there's a whole other side of this like experts conversation of those that have been doing it for a long time and can offer genuine advice. We'll come to that in a minute as well, but there's obviously focus on those that are getting started with it. Like, it's a hard situation to be in, like, to give them some credit.
I think it's a really tough market to come into if you want to go and do it. I think it's really hard. I've got friends who do it as well, right? I'm friends with a lot of these folks. I'd like to consider myself to be pally with everyone in our space, regardless of if we're a competition or not, because I believe firmly in the lane thing, right? I know what I'm good at and I want to do work for what I'm good at rather than just try and get some money through the door. I know money provides pressure. Like, if you haven't got an invoice out the door and you need to do it, you're going to take the work if you can get it. But it doesn't serve a longer term purpose. So anyone who is about to start off advising and consulting, my biggest bit of advice is just don't take the work for the sake of the work, or because it will come back and bite you, because the work you deliver is bad. People always talk about bad experiences more than good experiences. Recruitment owners are now plugged into several communities, so they have a bad experience with you, other people are going to hear about it. And as a solo consultant, your brand is your own, so is your name. So you got to look after it. But the other reason why I set up the consulting arm Embedded Ops was I worked at an agency where we had a non-exec director. And this fella turned up every month and basically said, what you guys want to do is make a bit more money, like do a few more placements. And if you can, spend a little bit less money. It's just like, make more money, spend less money. Wicked. And I used to see his invoice. And I'd be like, that cost us $3,000. Like, and we bought him lunch. It was like, what is going on here?
I think a good sign, and what I always look for when speaking to someone like that, is if they've got frameworks that they've developed and iterated over a number of clients, and they've kind of got proven results from those. Otherwise, if it's coming in and it's pretty general advice, or that, oh yeah, we'll come look at things and we'll see what we can do to improve things. It's almost like you're hiring someone part-time, but paying them 5-6 times over the odds to do the same work that hiring someone would be able to do for you, at least from what I've experienced.
Exactly that. And that's not to say that all, like I work now with some really, really good Neds. So there are non-exec directors that I work with who go in to do large transformation style advisory or support. And then they need someone who's a little bit more hands-on to deliver some stuff. So I'll come in and do that. And I love it. But with all the other solo experts in the space, LinkedIn is just not a real place, man. Like, people just post constantly about stuff on LinkedIn, and everyone wants to be an expert, and everyone wants to sound like they've got an opinion about everything. You know, I've got an opinion about everything, but when I try and post to generate conversations with people, it is invariably going to be process over tech, CRM selection, efficiency, data, and it's recruitment. That's all I ever want to talk about. And that's why I'll always, if something bullhorn automation comes up, hands on, I'll signpost them to Holly Langley, because Holly Langley's wonderful and loves bullhorn automation. It's what she does all day. She's flown over to Boston Engage. Like, that's Holly. That's who I'm going to contact. Someone needs like IT hardware support, I'd probably call Richard Caldercock, because he's an ex-IT director. You know, like, there are people I know that are better at doing these things than I will ever be. So I think staying in our lanes, everyone's sharing the work. There's plenty of business out there. We are now starting to see more ops hires internally coming back. So we are actually seeing some of the fractional COOs return back to ops manager roles. I think it's a good thing. I know it's going to make me sound like, I don't mean to be horrible. If I'm honest, whilst they were around, all they did was drive price down, and
it's never a nice thing. Yeah,
and it was a race to the bottom. It created a race to the bottom. Like, last year was like, there were plenty of instances where I just had to give up on opportunities because I wasn't going to drop my rates to match someone else's, right? Because that's just not what I needed to do. But I think that all in all, people that didn't want to really do it on their own are now back in house, which is great. I'm happy for them that, you know, we work hand in hand with ops people as consultants, and for us consultants, it's less crowded, and we can all stay in our lane and share the workload out. But you mentioned about the really experienced people that have been around, like even Kamal Ladwa, for example. Like, I meet Kamal.
I think it's just today celebrating 9 years at Saeed Consulting. I saw.
Like, it's just amazing. Like,
that's him.
And I see him at loads of events, and, you know, he's always happy to have a chat. There's others, Stuart Bentley, you know, he's been doing it for forever as well. Like, there are some really, really good experts out there, and you should definitely lean into them, but ask about experience. Like, ask for relevant experience. If you're the person that's about to engage with an expert, relevant experience, results, references, not too dissimilar to a tech purchase.
Yeah. And also, like, when you we'll come into this and we start working together, what are you going to do? Like, a 30, 60, 90-day plan is never a bad thing. And saying, you know, it's 30 days of learning and listening and observing, 60 days of designing an action plan, and 30 days of executing. There you go. 3-month commitment. Away you go.
Let's go. Yeah. Perfect.
It's almost like, really, the key thing I've taken away from all these points you've spoken about today is just kind of pause before you run ahead and do it. Like, we know business is very pressing and there's a million and one things to worry about, but just pause and really think about what are the right questions to ask before you jump into doing something.
Yeah. And we're talking about recruiters as well, right? They're so good at qualifying. Like, I know some of the best recruiters I've met are some of these founders who are phenomenal at managing expectations, qualifying candidates, asking all these amazing questions. And then it comes to buying a CRM, and it's like, wicked, how much is it? Let's go.
Yeah. They get excited by the shiny lights, and then that's it. That's all they really ask.
That's it. Yeah.
Spot on. Well, we are coming up towards time, mate. That's been a really interesting chat, and I'd love to carry on talking for another hour, but I think I'm at a point where I've got another meeting to jump into that. Let's push back a little bit, bless them. Any final kind of words that you'd have here? Maybe a top tip that you'd say to anyone listening to this? What's the key takeaway you'd want to take home with them? Maybe up to 3 if you've got a few.
Yeah, I would say, I'm going to go back to what someone said I should have tattooed on me. I'm going to say, I want to just really get across the point that process is much, much more important and will always be more important than any technology you're looking to buy. Putting crap processes on good tech doesn't get you a good outcome. You can run good processes without any tech and get great results. So if you're going to do anything, go and map some processes out, map out your workflows, get started. I've put loads of content out about how to get started around that. Like, get connected with me on LinkedIn. I will answer questions. If I can answer it in a quick reply, I'll answer it always. And hopefully other people can attest to that. So yeah, do get connected, go map your processes, and more important than your tech.
And this is a little point I'll put towards that at the end there. I remember once asking an expert we were going to work with, she shared loads, like 30 minutes of insight. And I was like, color me curious here, because I just wanted to ask the question. I was like, you've given me loads of insight here. Like, why would you do that without charging me? And her whole thing was, she's like, ideas are worth $1 million. Like, I can give you loads of ideas all day long. Executing it is where you'll trip up to try and do it alone. And I was like, very fair point. And we started working together for 2 years.
Yeah,
so that's always a key thing. And that's more my encouragement there, is to feel like you should reach out to people like yourself or the other names that you mentioned and just ask a few questions. You'll probably find there are some very good ideas we've got for you. And you'll probably be convinced at the same time that they're the person who will make it happen.
Exactly.
And that's the reverse plug I'll give you.
Yeah, very nice. Appreciate it.
But mate, that has been wonderful. We'll definitely have to do this again at some point, because I imagine over the next year we're going to observe a lot of change in the rec space. We know that AI is a big thing right now. The world's always changing. There'll be lots of things we can learn. So look forward to doing this again. Thank you very much.
Awesome, dude.